So just wanted to say thanks again for allowing me to speak here at the Angel Bee community and this AWS event. Really excited to talk to the Angel Bee community and for all of those in this session to really talk about security with the cloud. And we start to get into this conversation with a lot of customers about, hybrid architectures, hybrid cloud, running on-prem, public and private cloud. There's a lot of nuances here. And I really just want to be able to kind of hone in and really focus on how you can elevate that security posture with AWS. So I'm going to walk you through the journey a little bit here. So many organizations, they really face challenges are things like maintaining and managing the security of their on-premise infrastructure. And the biggest thing is why. One of the key things that we see is the lack of visibility. In an on-prem environment, it can really be difficult to know what resources and what data is out there at any given time, where it's moving and who's utilizing and accessing it. Most organizations just don't have that level of visibility that they would in an on-premise environment. And without that visibility, it really becomes challenging for those organizations to adequately secure that infrastructure and their data in order to meet their security and compliance requirements. Another thing that we see is we have a feature or a thing called low degree of automation. And what that really means is that when customers are basically working in an environment, typical challenge is trying to get rid of all of those manual processes and those processes employed to remediate issues. So you think of copying and pasting information from one tool to the next, or even if you're manually applying patches. It's really difficult to automate those key security tasks due to certain issues such as interoperability and integration with third-party and or homegrown tools. And that lack of visibility and automation in those environments really compromises an organization's ability to move quickly and effectively secure those on-premises infrastructure resources. So traditionally, organizations have been forced into kind of a binary trade-off. It's either move quickly or stay secure. And due to that overly manual security process, the InfoSec teams find themselves that it's often forced to slow things down to human speed so they can ensure the security within their organization. And that really tends to start to slow them down when they have to manually spot check, or they have to manually do things. That really tends to be cumbersome, especially in an age now where we want application teams to, and I'll use the buzzword, is they want them to achieve velocity. And application development teams want to move as quickly as possible, but then security starts to say, all right, whoa, slow down. We've got to start looking at things piece by piece. And then you start to kind of get what we call churn, where you're unable to kind of really innovate and accelerate. You really start to move really, really slow. And we want to kind of mix both environments. We want to keep them secure and allow teams to accelerate and achieve velocity. And today it's really possible to automate many of those basic security tasks, like things like patching and looking at the right tooling and getting the ability to gain that visibility to accurately identify and monitor those critical assets and data. And with the cloud, it's all made easier so that way you can stay agile, and also at the same time you can maintain, and in many cases, believe it or not, improve your security posture. And you can do this by providing highly integrated logging and monitoring, as well as being able to have those integrated tools to automate core security functions. And organizations that use AWS can innovate quickly and maintain that security posture. Now, many customers who are either just beginning their journey in the cloud, or if you are a customer who is well into your cloud journey, it's always a best practice to look at three important pillars when it really comes to security. And I'll kind of go through these individually. The first thing is you want to ask yourself, what are my capabilities that my teams will be able to utilize to be more agile? What kind of security operating model will I need to deploy? Who are the stakeholders that are going to have buy-in into this kind of engagement? The second thing is things like security readiness. going to be asking questions, who's responsible for certain things in the cloud? Who's responsible for the data in the cloud? Most importantly, what are the security controls that I need to put in place? What do I need to create? What are some that are available to me? And third, we have to ask ourselves, does this meet my compliance and regulatory requirements? Every entity and every company has to abide by a regulatory entity. They have to provide audit or basically auditing capabilities so that way they can have they can be audited, or they can basically provide that regulatory compliance. All of these are really important discussions to have, whether you're working on premises or if you're moving towards a hybrid cloud model. It's really important to keep these three topics in mind when you're looking at your cloud journey. And when we start getting into a hybrid cloud or a cloud journey, what does that typically look like? So why hybrid cloud? Why would I want to choose hybrid cloud? Believe it or not, many organizations are moving towards a hybrid cloud model. And that really is moving a lot of new applications into the cloud, re-architecting, re-platforming a lot of applications. And many applications are staying on-prem, whether that's for legacy environments that are going to continue to run for a period of time, or if those are applications that have dependencies on on-premise resources. And what we start to see here is enterprises are really starting to use a hybrid cloud strategy. And many customers are starting to make that move to the cloud as a way to expand or extend their capability. And one of the main drivers for this is that dramatic shift from basically capital expense to operating expense. So one of the things that we see from our customers is they want the ability to move away from things like vendor lock-in. Those vendor lock-ins prevent them from being able to innovate and accelerate, and the costs become very burdensome. They want to be able to move and embrace more towards cloud-native tools that allow them to increase their ability to innovate, most importantly, and also at the same time while lowering their total cost of ownership, while at the same time trying to maximize their return on investment. So you have to kind of look at it and being able to kind of balance all three of these things. So when we talk about security, most importantly, security within the cloud, is we talk about a shared responsibility model. And essentially what that shared responsibility model is, we look at the security of the cloud, and customers look after security in the cloud. So what does that really mean? That means that AWS's responsibility is responsible for security of the cloud. So we're responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all of those services and all the offerings in the cloud. And that infrastructure is composed of things like the hardware, the software, the networking, and all of the facilities that run those AWS cloud services. And then customers are responsible for determining of what they put in the cloud. So basically, a customer looks at it and says, this determines the amount of configuration work that the customer will have to perform as part of their security vulnerabilities. So for example, services like EC2 or Elastic Compute Cloud, or VPC, Virtual Private Cloud, or Amazon S3 or Simple Storage Service, these are categorized as infrastructure as a service, and they require the customer to perform the necessary security configuration and management tasks. So if a customer deploys an EC2 instance, they're responsible for the management of the guest operating system, including those updates and security patches, and any application software or utilities installed by that customer on those instances, and the configuration of basically the AWS provided firewall, things like security groups or network access control lists on each particular instance. So that's kind of how we break that down. In a typical on-premise security model, customers are responsible for the end-to-end security within their data centers. So if we look at this slide here, we look at how customers are today currently having to manage their current environment here, is that customers are responsible for the data centers, the hardware, the networking, all of the components that comprise of a on-premise data center. Customers are responsible for all of that. The great thing about the AWS shared responsibility model is that now they can shift that responsibility to us, so that way we can manage those things like the regions, the availability zones, the hardware, the compute, the storage, the networking, and the databases. So we can provide that layer of security for those resources, and then anything above that, the customer is going to be responsible for. So if you think about deploying an application, you'd want to deploy the application with a firewall, with security controls, and then everything all the way up to encryption the customer is responsible for. So really, basically, if we look at it here again, is that we start to see AWS's responsibility for security of the cloud, and then the customers are responsible for what they put in the cloud. So like I said on a previous slide here, is that if a customer wants to deploy an instance, there's a lot of capabilities around how they can go about securing their resources in the cloud. And in the next couple of slides, I'm going to really talk on really a couple of things that I find to be having conversations with my customers about, of how they can continue to increase and elevate their security posture. First and foremost, security at AWS is our top priority. We listen closely to our customers to offer both secure cloud computing environments and innovative security services that really satisfy that security and those compliance needs for even the most risk-sensitive organizations. And today, AWS protects millions of active customers around the world. Our customers represent diverse industries in a wide range of use cases, including large organizations, startups, educational institutions, and government organizations. And the scale of and the global reach of these customers gives us broad visibility to and a deep perspective on cloud security and knowledge, which we are rapidly reinvesting back into our leading edge services and infrastructure. Customers are leveraging AWS security as a way that they can transform, or the way that they do business. And a key component of that is being able to automate security and compliance tasks to reduce that risk, so that way it continue to help those customers grow and innovate faster. Also, it's another thing to note is that you also get a chance to really free up those resources internally that allow them to really focus on your customer and your core business needs. And really, when it comes down to it, is that AWS has the largest network and security partners and solutions that even extend those benefits of AWS by using those additional security technology and consulting for services from familiar solutions and providers that many customers already know and trust. So really, we want to look at this and say, all right, so I want to look at this and say, I want to scale my organization, scale my environment, and I want to be able to have the visibility and control. Typically on-prem, this has been kind of a really difficult, almost like juggling chainsaws, to kind of have scale and visibility and control. The benefit here is that with AWS, you can control where your data is stored. You can control who has access to it, and also what resources your organization is consuming at any given moment. Another feature is fine-grained identity and access controls. Combine those with continuous monitoring for things like real-time security information that really ensures that the right resources have access to the right level of access at all times. And the benefit here is wherever your information is stored. The benefit here is that you can reduce your risk as you scale by using our security automation and security monitoring services to really detect those suspicious security events, like configuration changes across your ecosystem. So does it really matter? You can really even integrate our services with your existing solutions. So you can run these on-prem, you can run this in the cloud. It just gives you the feature to extend those capabilities to support existing workflows and even streamline operations that really, at the end of the day, simplify compliance reporting. And that's been the hard thing where we had to work on-prem, is to be able to have that true compliance reporting. Another feature here is that we talk about standards for privacy, is that AWS is very vigilant about privacy. Because our customers care deeply about data security, we have a world-class team of security experts that continuously monitor our systems 24/7 to protect that content. So with AWS, you can build the most secure global infrastructure, knowing that you always have the ability to kind of have a way to encrypt the data and decrypt the data, move the data, and also manage its retention. So we provide tools that allow you to easily encrypt your data in transit and at rest to help ensure that only authorized users can access it. So we look at things like using our AWS Key Management System, or KMS, that allows customers to manage their own encryption keys. Even with a service like Cloud HSM, which is using FIPS 140-2 level 3 validated HSMs, we also give you that control and visibility that you need to demonstrate that you can comply with regional and local data privacy laws and those regulations. So really here is the key management is the important part, and being able to work with encryption to encrypt and decrypt various objects. And it's important to note that we have over 52 services at this point that KMS has integrated with. And that's 4 times larger than the next closest provider and 3 times larger than the next 3 providers combined. Another great feature here is talking about automation with integrated services. And really what this is being able to automate security tasks that really enables you to be more secure by reducing the human configuration and errors. And that really gives that team the time to focus on more or other basically critical workflows for your business. And the beauty here is that you can select from a wide variety of integrated solutions that really can be combined with automated tasks in novel ways, making it easier for security teams to work closely with developers and operation teams to create and deploy code faster and more securely. So for example, if you look at empowering technologies like machine learning, AWS really enables you to automate and continuously discover, classify, and protect sensitive data in AWS with just a few clicks within the console. So if you wanted to look at automation to really kind of help reduce the noise in looking at manual workflows, or if you want to look at how you can basically reduce the noise and manual work of your security engineers, you really have to pay attention so that way they can pay attention and they can focus on their expertise where it really matters for the business. So for example, is finding a point of compromised instances, looking at backdoor vulnerabilities, looking at things like CloudWatch events that even trigger Lambda functions, or Lambda functions that remove instances from security groups that basically allows one or more points of egress and egress to be blocked. Or even sending out things like alerting your security team. These are all really important factors that you have to play into account when looking at your security posture. So really we want to look at security solutions that really kind of basically broaden the spectrum here. We want to align those security services to the 5 epics of the security cloud adoption model framework. And basically this really tells a great story of how you could look at things like identity access management, being able to provision user access, really get fine-grained controls, and really start looking at things like Security Hub, Guard Duty, and then we start looking at the spectrum all the way through infrastructure protection, data protection, and incident response. And I'm going to go through these at a little bit more high level in the next couple of slides. But first I want to point out is a great customer use case, or a good customer example here is the regulatory entity FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And they oversee more than 3,900 security firms with approximately 640,000 brokers. And each day they watch over nearly 6 billion shares traded within the US equities markets. And they're using technology powerful enough to help them basically build in and look and detect for fraud, abuse, and insider trading. And in fact, FINRA processes approximately 6 terabytes of data and 37 billion records on an average day. And they use all of that to really complete that holistic picture of what a true marketing trading in the US looks like. And on a busy day, those stock markets generate 75 billion plus records. And the key to it here is that it all comes down to the execution and implementation of security in the cloud correctly. And if done right, you can have less exposure than in your own data center, and you can actually amplify what you and your organization can achieve. So just wanted to point that out as a good customer use case. Another great example here of a customer success story is Vodafone. They're one of Italy's top mobile phone provider, and they were able to use AWS's cloud to be able to really empower them. And Vodafone really manages, if we look at this, Vodafone really manages basically a top-up request through their new services as it continues to grow through several thousand daily. And they were able to spread through multiple online channels, including things like social media platform, Critically, it's one of the things that Vodafone is doing to really enforce strict security standards. So really using AWS, Vodafone was able to design and launch a security compliant solution within 3 months by reducing their capital expenditures by 30%. And that flexibility and robustness offered really gave them the ability to create an architecture that enables their customer to add more channels and payment services, which really enhanced their customer's customer, which was truly a winning combination. So whether you're basically born in the cloud or if in fact, if you're still running resources on premises, everything starts with user management, proper policy-based access controls. So I'm going to run through a list here. So you may say, so some users can be provisioned within the AWS Management Console. Others may need to use the CLI or command line interface. Different environments such as development, testing, or production have a different set of requirements. And on-premises authentication can be managed with things like federated or SSO. The combination here of the security operations team really needs to have that visibility into who is basically touching the data in the cloud. So you may say some external auditors need to access the logs, but nothing else. Maybe some mobile users need to authenticate to an application, and that may be thousands of users. With AWS is that now you have the capability to be able to create environments with the highest level of security for those user access, and most importantly is to have the insights into how those users are accessing those specific resources. So you can use things like identity access management, federated sign-on, directory service, Cognito for web and mobile applications, organizations that build policy-based management around multiple AWS accounts. So as your organization grows, you can continue to grow with it, and you can then start to enable service control policies or policy-based management on those multiple accounts. So I talk a little bit more about detective controls, and we start getting into a suite of services here, and I'll run through these really quickly here with you, is that really customers want visibility into those environments. And AWS gives those customers the visibility into your organization's security posture with things like logging and monitoring services, being able to ingest this information in a way that's very scalable. So if you look at things like event management, testing, and auditing, you want to be able to use some of these services to be able to continue to have them as a way to scale your organization. So services such as Security Hub gives you the ability to view and manage security alerts. AWS Config really logs all user access and records those configuration changes that can then be recorded, viewed, and then audited. Things like VPC flow logs gives the customers the ability to look at all of that IP traffic going into and out of those network interfaces, which can then be stored and viewed in CloudWatch, or you can even publish those logs out to a Kibana dashboard for more data and more rich analytic services. So I got all my resources running in the cloud. Okay, so how do I protect these resources? AWS gives the customers the ability to protect those resources, whether you're running in a VPC or if you're running at the edge. So with tools like AWS Shield, it really provides those customers with an extra layer of security for things like DDoS protection that safeguard those web applications from things like HTTP floods or SQL injections. Firewall Manager is a great service that allows customers to configure custom web application firewall access control lists or ACLs across all of those accounts for really truly a unified approach to how firewall management is done. Another great feature is Amazon Inspector, which is an automated security assessment service. And really what that does is it really looks at assets that within an application to look at specific things like vulnerabilities, certain exposure, and deviations from best practices. And then after it performs that initial assessment, Inspector produces a detailed list of security findings prioritized by level of severity, and these findings can then be viewed directly as a part of a detailed assessment report, which can be available in the Inspector console or even available via API. So we talk about data protection here. Again, we talk about many of the services that are integrated within KMS, Cloud HSM, which is FIPS 140-2 level 3, Certificate Manager, a way for you to basically provision and deploy SSL and TLS certificates. Macy is another great service that's continuing to grow across our basically across our platform, allowing customers to now start to look at being able to start scanning, use machine learning to start scanning and discover things like classified, or basically how you can classify and protect sensitive data. So for customers that are looking to protect PHI data or HIPAA data, Macy is a great service that goes out there and looks for that. Or if in fact, if you're looking for more stronger encryption tools, things like server-side encryption, you can also now basically benefit from this by being able to use these tools under our data protection pillar. So really the flexibility and dynamic nature of AWS really gives those developers and administrators the ability to launch and configure and use and terminate processes. So I want to talk a little bit here about AWS config rules. And really what this is simply a way that can really help other admins start to look at things like terminate processing or storage or networking and other resources as needed. In a way that gives them the ability to be agile in certain environments, keeping in mind security guidelines and policies that can be overlooked in a race to get new products to market. So if you want to think about it really quick, imagine that you had the ability to verify that existing and newly launched AWS resources within your organization's security guidelines need to conform to best practices. And you want to do this without creating a bureaucracy or spending additional time by manually inspecting cloud resources. And that really is the power of combining config rules with Lambda, which is a way for you to run, basically run code without having to provision resources or running servers. And it allows it to basically tie these two together that allow you to automate the security response and give those organizations to empower them to be more secure in the cloud. So for more information, really want you to just have a chance to go out to aws.amazon.com/security, take a look at our security offerings, our security products, learn how you can be more secure in the cloud, whether it's running on-prem or whether that's in a hybrid environment. Really encourage you to go out there and take a look at that. There's a lot of great tools out there. Reach out to your AWS solution architect for more details. We're here to help. So that's basically it. So Ron, back over to you.